Welcome to the new and improved ConfigureITDone Podcast. The ConfigureITDone Podcast is now a place where we interview senior thought leaders in the SAP space across Australia and New Zealand, and the aim is to tap into their knowledge so we can pass on their insights to the listening SAP community. Please subscribe to the podcast and like, share and comment across Castos, YouTube, Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
This podcast is in partnership with the Black Dog Institute, who aim to create a mentally healthier world for everyone. If you wish to donate to the cause, please click the link below.
So Andrew, I saw you present a few months ago and I was blown away by your passion and knowledge for what you do. And I thought it would be a good idea with Mental Health October upon us to get you on our podcast to Precision Sourcing and for you to basically download your knowledge to our community, because there was a lot of what I got out of listening to you that I thought would be brilliant for you to pass on. But before we do that, I know that you are a fellow at the Black Dog Institute and a postgraduate postdoctor. Is that right?
Yeah, a Postdoctoral Research Fellow is the word.
That's the one, yeah. So as you can see, I'll probably mess up explaining who you are and what you do. So if I could just hand over to you, could you talk a little bit about what you do and kind of what your role is here at the Black Dog Institute?
Yeah, so firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, thanks. I'm glad that my talk resonated. You know, that means a lot when you hear that. But so, I mean, firstly, I'll talk about, who the Black Dog Institute is. So basically, we're a global leader in mental health research, and our real focus is on translational research. So that means that we focus on turning our science into real-world action and impact. So we're looking at turning that science into things like services, resources, policy advice. So I love working here. There's a lot of great minds here, so it's a great place to be, and there's a lot happening. And it's important to note that everything we produce, all the services, etc., they're all evidence-based. So we make sure that they work before we put it out there in the world. So yeah, like you said, my name is Andrew Arena. I'm a researcher, and I work in the workplace mental health team. So the team that looks at mental health issues in all workplace-related sort of areas. And I focus on particularly vulnerable subgroups of workers, or I say workplace-related areas or groups because I also work or have done a lot of work in unemployment as well. But in terms of the occupational groups I've looked at, it's mainly been construction workers and first responders, so emergency service workers, people like police, firefighters, ambulance.
Okay. And it's Mental Health Month, October, and I thought it would be brilliant for you just to kind of put it into perspective around some stats and data on the challenge that we've got in the world when it comes to mental health.
Totally. So when we're talking about the workplace, the latest ABS stats show that about 1 in 5 Australian workers will experience a mental disorder within a 12-month period. So 1 in 5 is very significant. That's a lot of people. And when we're talking about mental health issues, we're most commonly talking about depression and anxiety issues. These are by far the most common issues we see. And when you think about the experience of depression or anxiety, it makes sense how that can start to affect people at work. If you're, really depleted in terms of your energy, your motivation, your self-esteem, that's going to start to come through at work. If you're constantly on edge because you're worrying all the time, you're going to feel like you're at the end of your rope a little bit. And so little things can become big issues, for instance. So we can imagine how it's going to be affecting workers. And so it is really important for, to consider mental health for, in terms of workers' livelihoods. But it is also important to remember that it also has a big economic impact. So mental health issues are estimated to cost Australian businesses up to $39 billion a year. Again, these are big statistics that we keep hearing. And this is in things like increased need for sick leave or decreased productivity, increased turnover, things like that. When we think about how it's affecting workplaces, we think about, for instance, the evidence around compensation claims. So making compensation claims for psychological injuries at work, for instance, we know that these things are becoming more and more complex over time. So they're taking longer and they're becoming more expensive. and they tend to be lengthier and more costly than claims for physical injuries overall, outside of spinal cord injuries, actually. So yeah, these things are becoming a more prominent issue in workplaces and something that's increasingly important to be considering. And I think it's important to remember that we should be trying to prevent these issues. And I think that workplaces are a great setting to be implementing prevention programs and initiatives.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you think how much time people spend at work and in the workplace. Now, we'll have a number of people watching this podcast, and a lot of them will be leaders in leadership positions with employees who they're responsible for. What is the role of leaders when it comes to their responsibilities with mental health in the workplace?
Yeah, I think that leaders at all levels are crucial in addressing mental health and making sure that your employees feel supported. So, any leader, leaders have a capacity to make change. They have that power to make change. That's why they're so important in this, in addressing these problems. And also when we're thinking about managers, for instance, these are the people who have really direct insight into what their workers are experiencing and some power to change things for their workers. So these are, really important avenues into making change. In terms of thinking about what leaders can do, I guess you need to remember that there are two ways that we can start to address mental health issues. So we can think about the preventative side of things, so preventing mental health issues before they emerge, and also making sure that you respond to mental health issues when they do emerge. And you can't just take one angle. We really want to be addressing both of these things. So that's important. Now, what can managers do? I guess at that preventative side of things, we want to be addressing risk factors in the workplace, So we need to be considering, how do we design work that is mentally healthy? How do we make sure that we're creating work that doesn't increase risk of mental health issues? So, it's not always possible to address everything, all of the risk factors involved at the workplace, but there's always something you can do. And if you can't do one thing, you can always compensate by increasing what you do in other areas. So for instance, we know that having flexible working hours is great for mental health, and not being able to do that can be detrimental for mental health. But not every workplace is able to do that. Not every workplace is able to offer workers a choice of when they start and end their shift, for instance. But if you can't do that, maybe you could do something in another area. Maybe at least you could make sure that workers have really solid support from their supervisor. Maybe you could look at, how do I increase job control, which, a lack of control over how you do your job is another risk factor for mental health issues. And so, maybe you could see, how can I give workers a bit of autonomy in the decisions they make that affect them directly? Maybe you could, give them some choice around the type of program they use, or what tasks they do at what time at their work, for instance. So there's always something you can do in terms of designing mentally healthy work.
Okay. All right, I'm going to spin you out now because I'm going to go back in a question because I think I jumped ahead there, so apologies. Fine. But so, like I mentioned, there'll be leaders watching this, but there'll also be colleagues who'll have friends who maybe they're in meetings with, or they work with 10, 12 hours a day on projects, high pressure. What are some of the things that not just leaders, but colleagues should be looking out for in the workplace?
Mm-hmm. In terms of like risk factors and things that are going to increase, say burnout, say mental health problems of all kinds. Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of things that can come up, and they happen at, again, different levels. So there are these broad organizational type factors, and there are factors related to your specific job and factors related to the team you work in. So at that broad level, we're often talking about things like stigma around mental health issues. So having negative attitudes about mental health, or needing help for mental health, or people who have mental health issues. So that's a really hard thing to address, I guess, because it is such a high level, broad sort of thing. But this is something to watch out for in your workplace. And that's something that everyone can be watching out for, because everyone is responsible for improving that, I guess. And this relates a lot to culture. Workplace culture is something that gets talked about a lot. And again, it's one of those very broad, can be kind of elusive to try and address. But these things are important in considering mental health in the workplace. So you want to have a culture at work that makes it easy for people to open up about their mental health issues, to seek help when you need it. A detrimental culture is one that makes people feel like they can't seek help or that they shouldn't need help for their mental health. These attitudes are things like, suck it up, get over it, cheer up. And if you have experienced depression, you would be able to understand just how common those types of comments are and how unhelpful they are. If you have a depression, hearing someone say to cheer up is a real slap in the face, So shifting a culture around these things is important. And I know that some industries are more prone to these types of cultures. Male-dominated industries tend to have higher levels of stigma. And so those are things to be watching out for, and everyone can watch out for that. But I do think it's important to have that top-down sort of approach where, people at higher levels make some changes that can help improve things.
So what you're saying is basically, as a leader running a project or a program, it's part of their role to be talking about mental health and making sure it's on the agenda, and maybe sharing that vulnerability and being open and aware of what's going on with people.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way in for leaders. Yeah, is to start bringing it up, have that conversation. And I guess one thing, if you wanted your workforce to be more aware of these things, you can also implement, mental health training for employees, or just, having, taking part in initiatives or making support options really well known and available.
Okay. All right. And I just want to take a moment to just reflect on the current situation we're in at the moment. There's obviously been a shift in the market with interest rates, and we're seeing certainly in the technology sector that there's a rise in candidates and unemployment, and some people certainly doing it tough within that tech world. How can we, and when I say we, the Black Dog Institute leaders, us as a recruitment business as well, how could we, in your mind, better provide support to people right now who are doing it tough?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think that unemployment is something that's really important to be thinking about because it has huge mental health implications for people. It greatly increases the risk of mental health issues and suicide as well. People often refer to their experience as kind of traumatic. And that seems like such a strong word to use, but when you think about it, unemployment takes away your financial security, which is essential for your survival, of course, but it also can strip people of their a big part of their identity, their purpose, and their sense of accomplishment. So it's no wonder why it's affecting people a lot. But like you mentioned, it's also affecting a lot of people. Even during times when the unemployment rate is relatively low, say 3.7%, which is where it's hovering right now, it still is affecting about 500,000 people across the country. So it's a massive issue that deserves recognition. So thanks for bringing it up. Now, how can we better support people experiencing unemployment? It's a big area. My own work sort of has informed a few directions for service providers in different areas. One thing that people tended to bring up in my research was that there's often this focus on the financial aspect, and often only on the financial aspect, that people should be getting any job as quickly as possible so they can get back on their feet financially, which is important, but it can be dehumanizing because it kind of ignores that there's this psychological side of things, that people have career goals and it's tied up with their identity and their sense of purpose and things like that. So I think there just needs to be a balance between those things if we want to be focusing on mental health overall. Another thing is to acknowledge that coping during unemployment is complex. People often know what coping strategies are going to be helpful, but there are all sorts of barriers in place. So you might recommend, make sure you're getting enough social support. And for a person experiencing unemployment, 1, they might come across judgment from other people when they try to do that. 2, they might not want to do that out of fear of judgment. And 3, they might not have financial resources to do certain social activities. So it's a big complex area, and I think you just kind of need to be connecting with a person on an individual level to know what's going on for them and what's going to work for them. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But other things, of course, you have your typical counseling type supports available. also, getting job seeking support can be helpful to build someone's confidence and things like that. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think what resonated with myself when you spoke before was you talked about that judgment side of things, and how even some people would feel nervous and maybe hesitant to even contact a recruiter about a job because they wouldn't want to be judged about the fact that they've been made unemployed. So they're not only they don't want to share it with their family perhaps because of judgment and their friends and their close circle, but even a recruiter who's there to help them, they may feel that fear of judgment. And that was something I took back to the office, and it's something that we've shared. And you hear of ghosting a lot from a kind of a recruitment point of view. It's very important. We have something that we talk about at Precision, which is no news is news. And by that, what we mean is the importance of checking in with your candidates and the people that you're looking for work for on a regular basis. And you might not have any good news for them, but that no news is news, and it means something to that human on the other side. And I think that's something that's really important within our industry anyway.
Absolutely.
But again, I'm going to talk about something that we've implemented at Precision Sourcing. We started it about 12 months ago, and it's called the Job Hunter Toolkit, because we're aware that in a country like Australia, where people have been employed and we've had a bit of a party for a long time, and we're aware that with the market shifting slightly and interest rates and unemployment, and especially in the tech sector, there is some people who are doing it tough. So we've created something called the Job Hunt Toolkit, and what that is I think it's the last Wednesday of every month. It's a session we put on where people that could pay $10 towards the Black Dog Institute, but basically they register, and for an hour they're able to work with some of our recruiters. And what they do is they help them with how to optimize their LinkedIn profile. Because people are not aware of the power of a LinkedIn profile and how that can put you out there in the community and make people aware of your skills and your strengths and show your experience and background. We also cover off how to set your CV up for success, and the importance of making sure that you get everything in there and represent yourself in the best way possible. And then lastly, we do a session on how to actually smash the interview and prepare for the interview, because these are the skills that people maybe are a bit rusty with. If you imagine there's somebody been with the same organisation for 5-10 years. So that's a session that we run at Precision Sourcing. But the other thing that we focused on, like I say, is the importance of no news is news.
I think that's great that you're sensitive to those things, because that was something that we did hear from people a lot, that the silence was really difficult to manage, when you don't hear back from an application and things like that. And so, if you can offer job seeking support that's sensitive like that, I think that's great. If you can couple that with also a bit of mental health support on the side in some way, that's even better. And I think you're setting that person up for a much better situation. If, like you said, people can be reluctant to get all sorts of help. So if someone's not open to seeing someone face to face or getting counseling or getting a mental health care plan from their GP or something, then we're looking at alternatives to make sure that everyone has an option to get some support. And so one thing we're looking at the Black Dog Institute is looking at digital mental health support. So I've been involved in a project that's developing the first mental health app that's specifically tailored to the needs of people during unemployment, and that's heard from these people in what they need and want in this app. It's called Anchored, and it's built around a 30-day challenge concept where someone jumps in once a day. For 30 days, you do a short activity, 5 to 10 minutes, and there are different resources in there, and it can link you in with different places as well. So it's just building that, skills to help support yourself. And what's great about this option is that it gets around the issue of stigma, that fear of judgment. It's a private way to get some help. It's not targeting people. It's not intending to treat people with a diagnosed disorder. It's not that level of support, but it's great for someone, say, who's just lost a job and needs some structure around how do I support myself during this time to, stay afloat and keep me in a good spot so that I can look for jobs and do the rest. It also gets around the cost barrier. So we want to make this thing free, and it's easy to access. Anyone can get it anywhere, anytime. So it's empowering in that way. And so where we're at with this project is that we finished the designs, we know what's going to be in it and how it's going to look, and we've started the early stages of preparing it for the build. But building app software is actually really expensive. And so, yeah, we're still seeking the remaining funding that we need to really get this project off the ground. But once we do, I think it's such a valuable resource for people to be able to give someone who's job seeking or something like that.
Well, if you need some developers, we could maybe provide them.
Yeah, amazing. Great, let's chat.
Okay, now the first time I saw you speak, you spoke about Anchored, and it blew me away. Is it something that you've got the corporate world interested in this app at all? Is there any interest in it? Are people aware of it?
I think people are very interested in it, but there's a gap between interest and willingness to give some funding because, like I said, it is costly. So yeah, like I think that we've received really good feedback in terms of how useful it's going to be, and a lot of people would love to be recommending it and using it. So we have a lot of avenues for that. I would love to see it, say distributed by workers at Centrelink, for instance, if someone's coming in for job seeking support. Just giving another option to get some of that mental health support. So
the future, what I'm seeing is if you're a corporate, a mining organisation, whatever it might be, or a technology company, and unfortunately you're in the situation where you're letting an employee go, you could also at that same time say, here's a tool that you could download and use in a 30-day challenge to support your mental health through the process of what you're going through.
Yeah, and how that's done would have to be done delicately, but totally, I think that that's a great place for that. And some people might not be ready to use it straight away. Some people, you need to take a second to process what's happened. But knowing that it's there for when you want it, when you're ready, I think that would be really powerful.
Okay. And what are some of the other resources that are available to support employees with managing their mental health and well-being?
Black Dog Institute has a lot of resources available. We have some online programs that you can find, like My Compass. If you go to our website, it's blackdoginstitute.org.au. Online, we also have this workplace mental health toolkit, which is just an online resource that you can find, and it gives a lot of tips and tricks in terms of how to identify if someone is struggling and how to have a conversation about mental health.
So if you're a manager right now or a leader and it's Mental Health October month, and jumping on the back of what we talked about, showing that vulnerability and maybe making it a topic or something on the agenda, is there something that they could go onto the Black Dog Institute website or a tool or something they could use and say, right, okay, for the month of October, for a week or for a month, we're going to do this challenge? Or is there something that could...
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be able to offer something like Anchored, because there is actually a version that we're going to be developing for workers as well. But yeah, like something like My Compass is an accessible program that you can use online and on your smartphone. We also offer all sorts of like mental health training, which can be a great way to sort of not only increase awareness of mental health issues, but it goes beyond that in terms of helping workers, for instance, develop practical skills around how to practice self-care and how to look after yourself and support yourself. We also have, of course, One Foot Forward is coming up, right? So it's a great way to get the workplace involved. It's a walking or running or rolling challenge. So basically you sign up to walk, roll or run, however many kilometers over the month of October. And it's a fundraising campaign, but also it's a practice in awareness of, generating, not only money, but awareness of mental health issues and acknowledging the struggle that that is faced by so many Australians every day.
Okay, and I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit with a question here that I haven't prepared you for. But if you're a leader watching this right now, and they're maybe on the way to work or they're on the way home after work, what's 3 simple things they could do the next day at work or today to really hit home the importance of mental health within their workplace? What are the 3 things, apart from, I'll give you number 1, jumping on and donating?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, we'd love to see that as one of the actions. Sure. Okay, a few things that a manager could do like the next day.
We like 3 things at Precision Sourcing.
Okay.
We like to cap things.
Let's see how we go. Yeah. So I guess one thing is to make sure that support's not only available, but really well known across your workplace. So if you have an employment assistance program, for instance, encouraging your workers to use that and making sure that, you regularly make it known that it's available to them.
Because that's the type of thing where people get it in their package when they join, and then maybe it's forgotten about, or it's not mentioned again, it's not shown visibly in the office, or
Totally.
Or people are not reminded about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another simple thing could be just to send an email around, hey, it's Mental Health Month. People are used to doing that sort of thing for Are You OK Day. Just having that like check-in. Remember to check in, with your team. How are they going? Make sure you're looking after yourself. Offer them some self-care strategies. One thing, I guess, like a more practical thing that I think is a really good tip, is when you are having an experience with an employee or a coworker that's quite difficult, maybe they're having some mood swings or they're really irritable, something like that. This is something that I've been caught out with myself, and I think is really good practice to try and get in the habit of. Take a second to withhold judgment. It's really easy to rush to like, this person's just difficult, this person's a pain, this person is whatever. Take a second, withhold that judgment and think, could this person be struggling themselves? Mental health issues manifest in all sorts of ways. And yeah, like building that habit of thinking like, hey, like, do I need to check in with this person? Is this person okay? I think that is such a valuable thing to start doing and to make that part of a culture at your workplace, that you don't rush to judge, that you're always trying to support your employees no matter, if they're having a bad day or a good day.
Yeah. There was one thing I was told that's helped a lot for having those conversations with an employee. So the way we're sat, it's pretty intimidating if you're sat opposite your employee or your leader or your boss, whatever you want to call them. And that,
I'll let you know I'm not feeling very intimidated.
No, well, I'm feeling very intimidated by your knowledge. It's very impressive. But that's for getting out for a walk and you're both facing the same way, and it's a lot easier from what I understand, and I've seen it with my colleagues as well. People are more likely to talk and share what's going on for them if you're actually facing the same way and you're walking and talking. So that's something that we've introduced, but that's certainly a tip I would like to share with the audience.
Yeah, that's a great idea. There are all sorts of subtle social cues and things that we can do to sort of put someone at ease. And
And I'm going to share one other thing, not that you've asked me for.
No, let's hear it.
But what we're doing at Precision Sourcing, thanks to help from the Black Dog Institute, we're doing a mental health bingo for the month of October. So I think we've got about 25 different things that people can do in the month of October, and we've made it a bit of a competition whereby obviously when people do it first they get a prize, but we've got all sorts of things on there, from breathing, yoga, reading a book, checking in with a friend, meditation, all sorts of things, just to try and encourage people to try something a little bit different.
Do you offer these things at work, or is it more like encouraging people to try it?
It's a kind of program we've got for the whole month of October, pushing people to do it.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to share this at the end of the podcast so people can use the template that we've got, because I think it's a great way of putting mental health on the agenda and getting people talking about it and showing that vulnerability as leaders, but also doing something that's a little bit fun. We've got things like cold showers in there and this type of stuff.
Yeah, that's one that I'm not so brave about,
You don't do it?
No, I'm not a fan, but I know it's good for you. Yeah.
All right, so if people are watching this and they'd like to donate to the Black Dog Institute, there's a couple of ways you could go about doing it. You could go to the Black Dog website and make a donation, or alternatively, if you're on Precision Sourcing's website, you'll see the link to the Black Dog Institute there as well, and your donations will be well received.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, well, Andrew, thank you for your time. It's been brilliant.
No, it's been great. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Please like, share, comment and subscribe to the ConfigureITDone podcast.